All right. Well, next we're going to transition over to the attackers. Again, there's a little bit of blending here, especially with Mason playing a couple different positions, Connor essentially playing everywhere and whatnot. But we'll kick it off with Captain America, Christian Pulisic. 91% said sell. You guys all said sell. I'm 50-50 on this. I got to look at my squad comp. Either way, Nick, if any reason you would say sell, is just because it hasn't worked. No matter who the manager, he hasn't seemed to have gotten a fair shot. He's shown glimpses. Why would he want to stay? I'm sure he's ready to go.
Yeah, it just kind of feels like it's the right time, right? And again, I think there have been bursts and glimpses and moments, and then there have been, a lot of injuries and a lot of missed opportunities. And, I kind of put the old Captain America line, a man out of time, which I think I did mostly for Dan. But it does feel like it's time. I think that he would thrive in Italy. And part of me, as a U.S. men's national team fan, I need to see him play, and it doesn't feel like he's going to play at Chelsea under Pochettino. I don't think he's the sort of profile of winger that will succeed in his system, and unfortunately, I think that experiment is over, as bright as it started. So, I think for me, Dan, it's a sell, and thank him for his service, and see where he goes next.
Yeah, it is the right transition point. I mean, you're also running down his contract too, so you would like to move while you have an opportunity to get some value back. We've seen the links with, as aforementioned, Italy as a potential landing spot for him. And selfishly, as someone who's also thinking about the next Men's World Cup, boy, oh boy, it'd be great to get him playing some regular football for a high-level team between now and then, so that we just continue to think about the U.S.'s world domination tour that we would like to head on. That would be really, really wonderful. But yeah, it has not worked out as well as anyone would have hoped. The injury issues have been a concern. The inability to get starting time over other players has been a concern. And this likely is the right point to get it done. So I think you recoup a little value, and because you also have a ton of other players who are much longer contracts with him, and that's what also influences my decision, Joe, is that there's just so much logjam at this position that there is going to need to be, I think, some... as said in the recent Succession finale, not a spoiler, but we're going to have to cut things to the bone. That is absolutely what is going to have to happen with the attacker situation.
I think with Pulisic, and I think this stands for probably a handful of other players in the squad as well, I think the injuries are just going to be his defining kind of, not legacy at Chelsea, but it's always going to be the what if. We've had, post-pandemic Pulisic in terms of that kind of, I can't remember, 10-game run or whatever it was under Lampard, where he was absolutely unbelievable and really did carry Chelsea in a way that a player hadn't done for a very long period of time to sort of finish that season as somewhat successful. I think now certainly is the time for him to move on, but I think there's almost a period of where he needs to kind of readdress what kind of player he's going to be moving forward, because I think the physical limitations that he has now compared to that incredible athlete who turned up to Chelsea, I think the electric pace has gone. Some of the physical qualities that he came with are just not there given the injuries he's had. I think it's a little bit of an adjustment in terms of the player he has. Maybe he steps inside and becomes more of a number 10 as that sort of role emerges back into the game. But I think at this point in time, when you're looking at, again, Pochettino wingers or Pochettino kind of forwards in general, that question about durability, what he's going to be asked to do, the amount of work he's going to have to get through, I'm not sure really correlates to where he is at this point in his career. And I guess to your point, as fans of the American national team, he just needs to start playing regularly now. Find a team and a system and a style of play that allows him to get through matches and allows him to build up an accumulation of minutes. Whether that is outside the Premier League, I kind of think it will need to be potentially Italy. I think is a great destination for him. But a player that unfortunately, as has happened to a few players we've seen, I think those injuries are just going to be a little bit too much for him to get back to that sort of player that he was starting to show at the end of that Lampard season.
Yeah, I think the last thing I'd say here is that he's been burdened with Eden Hazard expectations ever since he got at Chelsea, and Eden Hazard obviously leaving Real Madrid by mutual consent after a terrible 4 years of his career. Part of me wishes he never would have accepted the number 10 shirt, because I think that put undue expectations on him. The other thing is, like, he's just, I think, needs to go into a league where he's not going to get kicked every 3 seconds.
Yeah.
I think it's really impacted his career, and referees in the league have not figured out a way to protect players who are consistently getting dogged like that, and it's just not a great move. So just a couple more things on him, but yeah, I think we're all in the same position.
Well, my squad comp comes down to I keep him or we have to bring someone in. So again, that's kind of the situation that they look at as they try to balance everything. But I don't think anyone would blame him for leaving. I know, again, a lot of people are upset with him. Like, it hadn't been easy. It's definitely been a rough run for him. An easier decision, probably Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. We all said sell. I think we kind of talked about this at the end of the season pods, though, Dan. Like, he kind of got bait and switched by Chelsea this season. Like,
it was the ultimate catfish this summer. Hey, you're going to get a chance to play with your guy. Oh, by the way, your guy's gone. So we're going to have to figure out what's...
Right? One game with 2 goals?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very small number of minutes where the reuniting where it was to happen. It was more like a misconnections post on Craigslist of old that ended up happening between the two. Look, this is one you try to find a way to get him back to Barcelona. You use whatever dumb levers they have that they're going to pull, whatever crazy amount of debt and interest rate that they have on it. I think it's approaching like 8%. I don't care. Take whatever it is to get him off the books and free up your space on your roster to do what you need to do, because it's just done. The stupidity needs to end. Let's move on. Let's reset. And this is a position to do it in.
98% with the sell.
Incredibly intelligent audience we have.
Yeah.
Here, you need strikers. That's all I'm going to say.
I think it's the highest percentage of the entire poll that we did. I'm looking back.
Oh, there's someone else is pretty high too, but yeah, it might be.
It beat Badia Shield at 97.5.
98.5% Enzo Fernandez.
Oh, okay, yeah, so barely. Okay,
that's the two most polarizing figures.
You need, so hey, I'm talking squad comp, Nick. You need strikers. We don't have goals. You potentially are looking at Aubameyang or Datro Fofana, or bringing someone in to play behind Broya.
You're bringing someone in is the answer. You have to go get a top quality striker in the market, and I know there are not many of those. You're gonna have to do your best, but for me, it's he didn't want to be here. He was almost sold. It's over. Thanks for coming, I guess.
Joe, any hope? Any sliver?
Traditionally, this would be my he goes in the bin answer, which is, but I think given that we have essentially duped him out of an entire season of his career, I just think you just amicably go separate ways and just pretend that he is just a very random quiz question and answer in like 10 years' time in Chelsea quizzes. But yeah, just not just hasn't worked out, has it? So whatever economic levers Barcelona need to pull, whatever sacrifices they need to make, just get him out, because it's just patently clear that it's not going to work. So the less said about it, the better.
Well, the most important thing now is that you get the first deal done with Barcelona before they run out of cash, before they run out of line of credit. Like, we need to be first in line with Aubameyang to make sure that this goes through absolutely right away before June is over. Next one up we've got is Mykhailo Mudryk, right? 93% want to keep, which is really strong. This is one of those ones where I think they bet big on a young player, Joe. Has a high ceiling, a lot of potential, hasn't really gone off the way we maybe would have wanted to, right? He's only been here a few months. This is where you start to say, oh, I hope the ownership group didn't make a mistake, where it's kind of like Kepa in the sense you can't move him because there's so much time left on his contract. I'm not raising those flags, but I'm just saying this is the one where we really have to pay attention and see how he develops, because this could go wrong very quickly, is my concern, if the club don't handle him the way he needs to be.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, because I think when I looked at Mudryk, and I think I'm right in saying that he's only played like a handful, like 10 or whatever. It's a very small number, more professional games than somebody like Ian Maatson, who people are saying, maybe doesn't quite have the experience to be a Chelsea player. And it appreciated certainly that, playing in the Ukrainian sort of top tier is a little bit different than Championship and League One, but I guess minutes are minutes. He needs a real strong coach to work on him and his positioning off the ball, his entire defensive IQ in terms of being out of possession and what that means at sort of the top level. That excitement that we saw when he came on against Liverpool, and we all thought, hang on a minute, we might have maybe not the heir to Eden Hazard, but certainly somebody who maybe has the potential to be that kind of player for us, someone who's got that sort of skill set, and just progressively got less and less decisive and got worse over time. So this is a huge ask of Pochettino. Is you have maybe one of the best athletes in the Premier League, I think, in terms of his strength and his physical power and his pace. You're not going to find somebody as durable and as athletic as he is, certainly in the Chelsea squad, but certainly even further afield. So you've got this raw skill set, this raw physical talent, who clearly has a huge amount of technical skill and quality, but lacked confidence. His finishing ability sort of disappeared, and I think his immaturity out of possession, that is, when Chelsea both have the ball and when we're working defensively, those are things that Pochettino has to work on, because otherwise he's just going to be another incredibly expensive player who is on a stupidly long contract with very good wages, who you're not going to be able to shift in a year or two's time, because he hasn't quite sort of hit the expectations that you're looking for. So two really big coaching points for him are going to be the defensive stuff, and also just his general positioning when Chelsea have possession, when to receive, how to receive, what sort of runs to make. Obviously, that also relies on Chelsea players actually making passes forward at a time that is useful to attacking players. But I think he's got a pivotal pre-season, and certainly, he has the capability to be a very, very interesting player, just given the pace that he has and the skill. But the game now is about more than just what you do on the ball. It's what you do out of possession, particularly when your team has the ball, and obviously in terms of defensive transition. So he's got a lot to work on, I think. And Pochettino has the coaching skill set to do that. We've seen him develop young talent. We've seen him, make young players into fully formed footballers. But at this point in time, Mudryk looks to be like a very, very expensive project that somebody needs to kind of get a handle on, because both for his standpoint, his own mental well-being and clarity, he needs to feel like he's an important part of the project. But equally, you need to start seeing more of an output from him as well.
Yeah, I think this is the biggest question mark in the Chelsea squad is Mudryk. A lot of hype, a lot of incredible expectations. And I think this is one that you might not see start a whole lot of games next year. I think there's going to be a ton of work behind the scenes to make him into the player that is not just the gym rat, not just the player who has an incredible burst of pace, but make him into a complete footballer. Some of his missed chances at the end of the season for a player of his caliber were really difficult to watch. And I agree, Joe, with you that if you don't get this right this season, if you don't start to put him on a trajectory where he can reach the heights that I think all of us believe he can, it could be one of those that is a Kepa level, it didn't work out and now we're stuck with him sort of thing. And so I really hope Chelsea have a plan for this player, Dan, because if not, it's going to be tough.
It's a good thing we brought in somebody who is a strong coach, because not only does Mudryk need it, but I think there are other players, particularly in the attacking group, who are a little younger or less refined, and it's going to be really, really important over the in-between part of this, the end of this season, the beginning of next season. This off-season period is going to be really crucial to their development. And July 1st is an official date, can't come soon enough for Mauricio.
I think there's some questions because the next player up is Noni Madueke, who again with 97+% percentage want to keep. I think we compared them a lot, Dan, right? They both came in at the same time. And I was looking at the minutes on FB Ref. Mikhailo in the Premier League played 15 times, 657 minutes. Madueke had 12 games, but 643 minutes. So less games, but almost the same amount of minutes. And I think people would say that we've actually seen more from Madueke than Mudryk, which I think is probably part of the reason why people were a little bit upset at times or frustrated with Mikhailo. But that's credit to Madueke, if anything, not a slight against Mudryk. So Madueke, we're all saying keep. We've seen some great things. Again, a left-footed winger that plays on the right side, young, English, exciting.
Quicker decision making on the ball. Times he held on for a little too long. Again, it's looking at the things that are coachable in someone's game. Things about like the electric way that he plays in terms of the speed and pace to bring people down the line, how he can be very tricky in the way that he cuts back and cuts back in. There is a high football IQ there. It's just a matter of really saying like, hey, slow down a second, like get the ball away, and then like go play the 1-touch, 2-touch situation so that you can be a better contributor in the attack. That is missing right now because, different from the Eredivisie, you don't have as much time before the defenders are kind of running you down to make life difficult for you. So I think there is a lot of promise. When he went away on international duty, he lit it up pretty well, came back, did end up working himself into getting an opportunity for some minutes. And again, I think just with Mudryk, Madueke, there are glimpses of what could be a really great player. There's a pivotal season ahead for what his future in the Premier League and for Chelsea looks like, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, 97.5 to round up keep, which is right. I'm high on him. I really think there's a talent there. I think he is not a predictable winger, which is so refreshing for us to not have to funnel through the same repeatable style of play every single match. I think there's something really cool about that. And tweeds to increase the right side of our team could be fun debate. He is a part of that, right? I mean, you think about the right back, you think about the right center back, you think about the right-handed midfielder, and you think about the unpredictability at the top with him. It could be a hell of a lot of fun.
Madueke is a relatively consistent end product / decision-making process away from being a very, very good right winger. Mm-hmm. There are times, I think, this season where he has done some unbelievable work, and then it's just, he's chosen to shot or he's played sort of a pass that he shouldn't have. I'm thinking that it might have been Bournemouth where Conor Gallagher was on and he could have squared it and he sort of took a bit of a weird shot, that sort of stuff. It's not a huge issue in his game to fix. I think the part that he has down is the ability to beat players one-on-one in the Premier League. We haven't had that for a long time on either side. Consistent wing play where you can give them the ball, they're going to dribble and beat players and create and draw defenders to them. As I say, it's that final kind of mental tweaking. It's that final part of the game now that he has to work on, which is just being 8 times out of 10 making the right decision for him to sort of give that pass or to take a better shot. And I think that's the thing that Pochettino will hopefully work on with him, because again, if he is your right-sided winger, you've got Reece James, you've got Fofana, you might have something like Santos would be hilariously crazy to add into the mix there if he does pan out as a player. Very, very exciting. And I think, again, somebody that I want to see maybe coming into season maybe has that right-sided spot locked down for the time being in my head. But I think, obviously, we want to see the development. We want to see the decision-making improve. But a great player, great prospect. And I think in terms of some of the players he brought in for the money, again, looks to be a great piece of business.
The unpredictability I really like. To your point, Nick, the one thing, according to FBref, is the goals. Hardest part of the game, though. If you can create and unlock, that is so key. Especially, we know the bottom, chunk of the Premier League love to play at the block 8 or more. He's going to be good. I'm not going to lie. Madueke was nowhere on my radar. I don't play Football Manager. I've been in FIFA. He came from the Eredivisie. He seems to have settled back into life in England very quickly, and I'm very grateful for that. And that was a good bit of business. Credit where credit's due. And you keep him and you play him. Let's see what happens. Raheem Sterling, next up, only 67.5% saying keep. The rest are sell on the flip side. The three amigos here, we said keep. Tweeds, you said sell. I'm thinking from a football director standpoint, isn't it going to be hard to sell Raheem 1 year into a contract, big wages, didn't have the best season. To be fair, the entire club didn't have the best season except one, Kepa, who told the world he was having a good season.
You're not going to let that go, are you?
No. I'm sure not. Raheem Sterling, what are your thoughts? How are you viewing this situation with him? Tweets. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I was taking, because I think I'm the only person who said to sell him, so I was gathering
all of
my
the
thought process
thoughts.
here.
All of
the
thoughts.
thoughts here. Yeah. I have been incredibly disappointed with Sterling this season. I wasn't expecting the Man City form. The volume of chances that they create, the volume of chances that he had, clearly was going to be a huge downgrade by coming to Chelsea. But as a prominent England international and a guy who has turned up in major tournaments, I was expecting to see a bit more leadership, a bit more overall, I think, from Sterling. I think for me, has just been a very, very disappointing signing, given the wages, given the transfer fee that was paid for him. There are loads of caveats to that. The team hasn't been great, maybe hasn't had a consistent position, hasn't had consistent partners, all that sort of stuff going. I would have suggested that we'd bought Sterling to be something of a difference maker, somebody who made others better around him, and was somebody that I think a lot of the younger guys could have kind of bounced off and used as a little bit of a fulcrum to learn and develop their kind of, I guess, final third play. None of that has really come to fruition in my mind, and I think again going into this season, it's probably not going to happen in terms of being able to sell him given the wages, given that he's just moved. But I don't see really, if I'm Pochettino, I want Madueke playing on the right, which is why I think Sterling potentially would play. Maybe you're suggesting that he starts on the left hand side. I've not seen enough for him to think that he's going to be this transformational player, and maybe you're keeping him because really at this point you have to, because so many players are leaving. But I think I've just been disappointed with him to the point that I don't really see him being here in 2-3 years' time. And again, that's been my sort of thought process and logic in this whole process.
Yeah, I don't think you can move him. I don't think there's any team in the world with only 9 goals and 4 assists last season that's going to take on £350,000 a week. This is, only because he ended up producing a little bit more at the end of the season. He's not in the biggest blunder category for me. That was some other folks up top, but you have to keep him and you have to hope that he catches fire. I think he's right now a more complete left winger than Mudryk is, than Pulisic is. And just because of that, Dan, I'm keeping him. I also just think that of all the business problems that we have in selling players, this is the biggest one.
I mean, I think we've probably said maybe a couple of times, like, this is the biggest issue. This is the bigger problem. This is the biggest one to sell through. I think if objectively the Cucurella deal becomes the most difficult to sell through, just looking back at this holistically, I do think that Raheem Sterling is not an easy player to move on. And so that is something that should be taken into consideration. Season over season downgrade in terms of goals and assists. And again, I think it's a little inflated when you think about the Manchester City side. He got a chance to play in from age 20 to age 26 and coming to us at age 27, 9 goals, 4 assists all across all competitions. So 25 the season prior, 13 this past season. If a better attacking situation can get him firing, get him back to the higher end of that teens or the low end of the 20s in terms of goals and assists, I think you just have to ride it out one season and then reevaluate, because you can't. The other thing is you can't blow up the whole side. This is not an exercise in, I'm just going to hit. This is not Oppenheimer. This is not a Christopher Nolan deciding to show you how the atomic bomb works. This is the reality of people, humans, decisions that have been made, financial implications to it, and what it is. As much as Joe is trying to be the devil on my shoulder and saying that we can, I just don't think this is going to be a situation where it is a Raheem Sterling is a movable asset. So I think you have to keep him.
That's kind of where we're at, right? The club made decisions. Now you have to sit with the decisions, and hopefully Poch can figure out how to get him back to his best. I remember when we signed, we were talking about leadership. We're talking about big game player, England international, all these things. It was going to try to help lift. There still is that role. I mean, we talk about young wingers in the squad. Hopefully he can be that locker room, especially as we talk about some, Aspie Laqueta leaving. There's going to be a leadership gap. Heaven forbid Mason Mount goes and things like that. You just hope, at a minimum, some of those intangibles come through if he's not playing that well on the pitch. But sometimes that does undermine you. Even if you're a strong leader, but you're not playing well, that hurts you.
There were some just abject performances from him this year, and I don't want to discount that because I think the expectations of the player like this are elevated compared to maybe where Mudryk was or something like that, because he has the experience. He's scored 160 plus goals, had 94 plus assists in his whole career. He should be better than what he showed us last year, and let's just hope that Poch can get a tune out of him.
All right, next one up, Armando Broja. Coming off of another injury. Well, not another, but a big one.
Yep.
So he played in that Aston Villa friendly right over the New Year, post World Cup, went down awkwardly. Bummer. So before that, I remember I put in my end of season, I love seeing him against Wolves. He has so much potential. He's young. Mm-hmm. We want to see more of him, and it was cut short. We all want to keep him. Obviously, Dan, you said recovery's a question. I don't think he's going to be pushing for the number one. I think him from where he feels he should be, I bet a year ago, he wouldn't be happy in this position being a number two. Coming off this injury, I bet he is going to be happy to be number two and train consistently and get some minutes here and there. So I actually think this is probably a good time for him to slot right in.
I would agree with that. I think that he probably draws some loan interest because he has, previously was on loan to Southampton, had 6 goals, appeared in 32 matches, 21 starts, so 2,000 minutes this past season. Only 2 starts, 12 matches played, 291 minutes to get 1 goal, which is a lot more than some other players that potentially were even signed and had more minutes to impress. This one just feels like he would be the number 2 to the +1 signing of a permanent striker that most of us have in terms of our end squad composition. Spoiler: we all think that Chelsea need to sign a true number 9, a true striker, and Armando would potentially be the 70th minute option to come in off the bench.
Ooh, I'm excited about him, man. I still am. Injury aside, I think this sort of player, this sort of dynamic player, assuming that he can get back healthy, which, I think ACLs have become a much easier injury to recover from for a lot of players than maybe they used to be, right? Caveat being,
I'm walking proof.
Brandon Busby,
real athlete.
Ultimate example of what great modern medical science can do.
Some said I'd never walk again.
To bring an athlete back to the podcast studio.
Yeah, much like a horse, he was going to the glue factory and then magically has reappeared. And now look, I think Broja, man, of all the players that Poch might have a true impact on, this player is super exciting to me, Joe. I mean, he has that combination of pace and intensity and shithouse. And the irony, I think, is if he would have stayed healthy this year, he probably would have started a majority of games the second half of the season.
Yeah.
Because there was just no one else.
Yeah, the Albanian Anelka, as I've started to dub him in terms of play style. Yeah, he is incredibly interesting. I mean, there's so much to his game. I think Nick, you were talking about there, but just somebody who can finish, great pace, great strength, works incredibly hard, runs the channels. When you're talking again about basic Pochettino principles, Broja really ticks a lot of the boxes. He is I guess so much is going to happen in terms of the physical condition that he returns from this injury to. But again, you're looking at somebody that might have a shot here. And while I'm not going to start saying that he's going to have sort of a Harry Kane kind of ascension into being this world-class player, he does have a lot of the fundamentals that Pochettino will work with, and certainly can get a tune out of. So certainly, I think one to watch. Would absolutely play him over any forward that we have at the club, anyone coming back from loan, pretty much anyone that we have at the moment that isn't being bought. So for me, he is an incredibly important piece of this puzzle as we move forward into the next season. But I just hope that he can recover from the injury, because I think that there's something quite special there if he can. If he can come back, he's got all the traits that you want to see, and I think Pochettino can make him even better.
I will wait and see. 81% of the people said to keep. Only 13% even think about a loan. He's got high stock. As you're talking tweeds, I went there. I thought mini Kane. I said it.
Whoa.
We'll see what happens. He's got a big future out of him. No pressure now. We just want to get him back into a regular rhythm of playing football.
No pressure.
Nope.
Says the guy who just said mini Kane.
I whispered it. It's different.
Okay.
Hakim Ziyech, 93% sell. I'm going to go out there, Nick. I'm going to say let's sell him again.
Wow.
For the second time this season.
Bold moves from Brandon Busby this episode.
Hey, I said again. All right, this will be the second time we've moved him on this season.
Yeah, I don't think we have to spend a whole lot of time on this one. This is a toodles for me, which is about as harsh as I get on these episodes. It's over. Let's move on.
Joe, dare you say anything wild?
I do dare, but not in this case.
I figured to get the bin treatment.
The defense rests, Your Honor.
Exactly, yeah. Fellaini has put across an incredibly, he's not quite bin territory, but I don't know if there's if you were just in an office and you were just sort of playing the throwing waste paper into a basket case, that's where he is at the moment. So not quite bin, but just maybe target practice. But he needs to go for his own career. It just hasn't worked out for him. So yeah, see you later, or toodles, as Nick has put it.
Well, especially with Poch coming in, a high running coach. I mean, that's just not him. So he definitely doesn't want to stick around for that preseason. Tweez, one we've talked a lot about with you is Callum Hudson-Odoi, right? Obviously, we've been tracking him, ever since he's 19 and started to break through. 78% here say sell. There is a 15% contingent that says keep, but I would say it's 6% low. No one's really thinking about that. We all said sell. He's been at Bayern, Leverkusen. It hasn't been great there either. So again, I think we're all kind of in the camp of, hey man, hit reset, go find a home and build it up again.
Yeah, I think that's the case. And, I've spoken a lot about sort of injuries being quite critical in Chelsea players' career. And I don't think Callum has got back to anywhere near the level of confidence in his own body post injury. And the Leverkusen loan, I mean, you're expecting really for any player to come from the Bundesliga to the Premier League. Players that have put up ridiculous numbers out there and still not come and done fantastic, like Jadon Sancho's numbers in Dortmund were insane. Haaland obviously is exception to the rule, but most young attacking talent that plays in the Bundesliga can excel given just the general conditions of games out there. And the fact that he not only didn't really excel, he barely featured and was pretty much an afterthought, to me suggests that he's just not there. I personally, I think he needs to go to, not necessarily from a personal standpoint, but find a championship team. I think he needs to drop down a level, needs to get that confidence back into his game, because you look at the player that was emerging under Sarri and that confidence, that one-on-one ability, that acceleration, that explosion that he had, the goals, the finishing, all the sort of things we were looking at as he was emerging just have not been existing post-injury. And I think he maybe needs to drop down a level to just find himself and find his style of play now and determine whether he still is going to be that explosive winger or if he needs to adapt his game. But I don't see there being at the moment a way back for him into this Chelsea squad, given the loan was about as poor as it can be in terms of output and in terms of minutes, just in terms of general perception as well. So I would like for him to go and find himself and maybe in the future he makes his way back to the Premier League and back onto the trajectory that his career seemed intent on. But ever since the injury, ever since the Bayern contract, ever since the big wages and all that sort of stuff as well. It's been a bit of a rocky road for him, so I'm hoping that he can go and get some stability. But again, I would look to move him on, both for, I think you can get a little bit of money for him now, but also just the benefit for his own career.
So, Nick, only 14 matches featured in the Bundesliga, 7 starts, 605 minutes. That's less than Madueke and Mudryk, who came in January. He's only played 86 matches in the league, in whichever domestic league he's been in, since 2017. And he had his big 1920, 2020, 2021 season where he played 22 and 23 times. He's only broken 1,000 minutes once. Like Joe's point, hit reset. We appreciate you. It's just not kicked on. I think we just need to let him go.
There's a diamond of a player somewhere in there, right? And I think if you would look back at previous keep sell loans, this is a player who we're like, who's it going to be? Pulisic or Kyle Hudson-Odoi on the left wing? And it's like, now neither of them. It's a tough beat, man. And I really do, for his sake and his career's sake, hope that he's able to find a home with a manager who wants to build around him and his skill set. Because I do think that there's still a player there, for sure. He's too young to have gone through as much as he has in his career already, but it does feel to me like it's time, and I think Dan hope that he is able to recover some of that Champions League form from the Juve experience at home in 2021, because he was dynamic.
Yeah, this is not one where it feels good to move on. Again, there are some where Nick has used the word toodles. Joe refers to it as going into the bin. This is one that, much like the ASP one, they're getting a fond farewell, and they're getting gift baskets and Amazon Prime subscriptions or something as a parting gift.
I remember we fought hard to keep him. He was going to leave a few seasons ago. Chelsea fought hard and got him to stay, and unfortunately it just hasn't panned out for him. So the next one on the list, though, is David Datro Fofana. I don't really have anything to say because he spent more time in the dev squad than the first team, even though he did get a couple appearances under Potter. We're all saying loan. He came from Norway? So again, expectations are low. He's still younger. I think we're pretty much all expecting a loan. The question is where? Really
raw player, tons of upside, right? And we've all seen the compilation tapes that have been put together on him. I think he needs to go to the championship or somewhere in France, Joe, to make an impact and to really start to craft his skills a little bit. Either it could be a sneaky Strasbourg shout in there if Chelsea are able to institute the multi-club model that they want to do. But that, to me, this is a player that's probably 2 or 3 years away.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, if you think at the end of the season just how badly Chelsea's frontline were playing and he still couldn't get a start, that to me I think is an indication of probably where he is in terms of levels. And when he did feature maybe 1 or 2 relatively decent moments, but mostly looked like a player well out of his depth at Premier League levels. So I think at the moment, completely agree, a loan to a good championship club would be great, a loan to France or Portugal or wherever, but he needs to start building the foundations because... yeah, he is a million miles away. He's very, very far away from being a player that can contribute for Chelsea in any meaningful way. So loan definitely for me.
Well, I think we can move on quickly. 2 lightning rods to really drive this home. Kai Havertz, who's recently being heavily linked with Real Madrid. Mm-hmm. The money is obviously going to be a play. Kai scored the winning goal in the Champions League final, struggled to maybe kick on for there. High expectations. Heard him called a generational talent. Obviously came from Leverkusen. Guys, it's been tough. He's one of those players where he's not an effort player, Dan, right? He lets the game come to him. He kind of flows with the game. He's not one to really grab it by its neck and take it to it. And I think we've struggled. He's played the 9, played an attacker. We've tried him in a lot of different positions. But the fact of the matter is, for the amount of money we spent, for all the hype he's had, we just haven't figured it out. The only thing I would caveat with all of us saying sell is that apparently there's a lot of people are starting to dig into what he did at Dele Alli, who kind of had the same play style, didn't try hard, kind of was tall attacker. I remember Dele Alli scoring 2 back post headers against us a few seasons ago. Is there a way that you keep him around, or is this a little bit emotional with Kai? We're all just like, sell him, start over, we'll figure it out.
Well, it's like everything except the volume of goals is where Kai Havertz has excelled for Chelsea in terms of link-up play, being able to be the front guy, distribute the ball out, like a lot of really positive elements in his skill set. But you look at 9 goals, 7 assists in his first season, obviously very much held back by the long COVID exposure that he had. Then bounce back season, 13 goals, 5 assists, so 18, you were heading to that like 20 plus range. You're like, okay, we're going to bounce back. We're going to head into this season. He's going to really have that meteoric rise. And then it's 9 goals, 1 assist. So actually a regression backward and slip in terms of total goal contributions, equaling his worst Chelsea season so far. This does feel like if there is a buyer, if it is a valuation that seems really high, as much as there might be a desire to kind of work with Pochettino to try to figure out what his place is, I do think Tweeds, this is the great reset for Chelsea. And so, again, cutting to the bone more than potentially trying to figure out, unlocking where we have enough data. It feels like the data is telling us that it would be better to try another option.
I think Kai is, I guess, in terms of like relationships, he's the person that you like the idea of more than the reality. The idea is always more appealing in terms of Kai Havertz, and he has some absolutely exceptional moments in a Chelsea shirt. He's had some phenomenal games for us, but I think when you really look at his best performances have always been in Europe, and maybe there is an element where Premier League football just doesn't quite suit him. You could argue certainly that maybe he's not playing in his best position. The question there is obviously, well, what is his best position in a Chelsea shirt? What is his best position in a Premier League context? I think if you're getting rid of him and Real Madrid are coming in and buying him, and you're replacing him with Nkunku, I think that's a net positive for Chelsea. I'm more confident that Nkunku has a skill set, has a general style of play, has just a general ability that will suit him more to Premier League football and to Chelsea and what Pochettino is after in terms of that number 10, number 8 sort of connective player. I think, there'll always be a case of what if with him, but I think from a kind of a languid sort of style in terms of his football ability, whether he's going to fit in with Pochettino and what he wants and his desires is a little bit debatable. I think, yes, I definitely get the Dele Alli comparisons and certainly note that I think playing him as a number 10 in a 4-2-3-1 with a centre forward is probably the last roll of the dice of him in terms of how you're going to get the best out of him in a Chelsea shirt. I just think if the money is there on the table and you can get some decent fee, or if you can get a decent fee for him, get those wages off the book, bring in Nkunku as a replacement. I just think that the net positive is too great for Chelsea not to consider that. So I think 100%. He's great. We'll thank him for the incredible performances on the way to winning the Champions League, but just doesn't, for me, have that domestic consistency that you would want for somebody. And I guess even at this point to suggest that maybe we can build the team around him as a player, I don't think he's quite shown that in a Chelsea shirt to have that level of authority and almost respect put on him in terms of constructing a team that gets the best out of him as well.
And you'd have to build the team around him. I think that's pretty clear right now. Like, it would dictate your formation, right? How you want to play. And if he was out there 25 goal contributions a season, then you can make that justification pretty easily, right? I mean, this is a guy who I think we all know has a ton of talent. I just don't know if he's built for the Premier League. And if Real Madrid are going to come in and take a sizable amount of money off the books, give you a sizable transfer fee, 70 million plus in transfer fee back to us, then you take the money and run. You absolutely do. And you figure out how to build it. The other knock-on effect, Brandon, for me is like, if you do sell Kai Havertz, then you have to look at the Mason Mount situation differently, I think, because if Havertz is the first to go and you are able to recoup a large transfer fee for him, get his wages off the books, and you're bringing in Nkunku, but you don't really have another number 10 outside of that, then for me, that is a difference maker in the Mount negotiation. So I think there could be a potential knock on. We're not retreading that territory in this one, but just thinking about the scenario.
I mean, look, he's a regular German international. He, in the Premier League, was by far and away our most dangerous threat. He had 11.6 XG. Raheem Sterling was in second with 6.2, and we fell off a fucking cliff at 4.9 with Felix and everyone else at a 2 or lower. He was the only threat we had. So then again, it's a season where Mason was largely not available, and we know Mason can provide a lot, but that's it. I mean, if you lose Mason and Kai, all attacking threat is gone from this team, and we have to look at, okay, what do you do to replace them? And Kunku coming in is obviously a huge help to that situation, and that is why he's being brought in, to bring the goals very specifically. But it is a big gamble. Again, if you're going to kind of reconstruct everything at the top pitch, but that's what Poch is going to have to figure out what he wants to do with the options they have. How much turnover is too much turnover? That's a big one as well. I understand Kai's been underwhelming. It's that you just look from a statistical, analysis, and maybe that's just because he was the furthest man forward playing as the number 9 this season. What do you do? You know what, guy? He's still 23. Yeah, that is crazy. But if you get anywhere upwards of 70 for him from Real Madrid, that's gonna be tough to say no to. And maybe it's one or the other with Romelu Lukaku. Do you keep one, get rid of the other?
It isn't.
Are they tied? Well, talk me through it.
That was a lie.
Talk me through it. Yeah. I mean, I'm saying keep on Lukaku. We got too much money tied up into him. I don't think you're going to get enough out of Inter Milan. They're going to continue to say, poor me after they win the Champions League. What else do you do?
No.
We're already paying for him.
You sell or loan. He's never coming back to Chelsea.
You sell would be
give a fuck.
Massive financial loss on that.
Yeah. I mean, you made a massive, not you, Bully. Chelsea made a massive financial mistake bringing him back, and it's one that I think you're probably going to have to cut your losses on, get as much as you can, and never look back. I mean, he's still, at this point in the press, is talking about, I went to Chelsea, but my heart was still somewhere. Like, fuck you, man. Get out. I'm done. It's over. There is no fairy tale ending for him at Chelsea, and I don't think the fans would want him back either. Like, this is not one. I just don't even think it's a good fit for him anyway. But like, I think his play style at Milan is so suited to him and what he can do, and now it's just a question of like where he fits into the books from like a loss perspective. To me, like, I just don't. I really don't think that that's a possibility.
The situation to me, I think, is look, he does have an opportunity to stop Manchester City's dreams in their tracks, to burst the bubble, to wake them up from the delirious slumber that they find themselves in, where they're dreaming of their first Champions League trophy. So that would be a way to bridge some love back with many Chelsea supporters if he were to do that. I do think it is a harder situation to get out of, and I think the question is going to be, how much is he willing to reduce his wages? How much to make something happen? How much are we willing to write off as a catastrophic loss in order to move him on? And I really think the question is, more so to me, does Pochettino think there is something there that he can work with considering the lack of other top strikers in the area? Like, I think that is the big question. Like, 'cause if you're not with Lukaku, like, I mean, I don't know what everybody's attack looks like here. I'm trying to look ahead to it, but our attacks don't look too great. There are not a lot of goals in our attacks right now, and so ultimately, I'm a sell on it. But I can envision a scenario where he's back next season. I can, Joe. I know that you're saying that you don't want him back, but I can see what the steps would be to get him back. I just don't know if that makes a ton of sense.
I think Nick's opinion on this is factually correct in terms of him just not coming back. I think his demeanor, everything he said since leaving, it's just, for me, it's too big a bridge to sort of come back on. Whether we ever play the style of football in the Premier League that is going to see him have success here is, I guess, another thing that I'm looking at. I do think he'll start pre-season here. And again, I think to my point, as I'm looking at my squad forming at the bottom and it's got about 13 players in it, I think we do actually need to look at how we can utilise some of these players coming back in, and the amount of money tied back up in the amount of money tied up in him as a player. It will probably necessitate that Pochettino has to sort of see whether he can get a tune out of him, which I guess immediately is putting him on the back foot. The only saving grace here is that if we can sell him or do one of these kind of Cuadrado-esque loans where we just loan him until his book value diminishes to zero, maybe that opens you up to being able to sign an Osimhen or whoever that player is going to be. But yeah, I personally I don't want him anywhere near the club. I just think the attitude and just his personality and that will just be a huge down on a very, very young group. Having that negativity around isn't fantastic when you've just had one of the worst seasons in sort of Premier League history that the club has had. So I wouldn't necessarily want him around from that perspective. I do feel, however, given everything that I've said and certainly just echoing Nick's comments, I do think that he will be here. I think he will be here for pre-season. I think it will be for Pochettino to make a determination on whether he has the ability to be the focal point of the team. It may be that we have a season of him again. But I think from just being a rational standpoint, him being back would be, I think, a step backwards for the cultural reset that we're trying to sort of put into place. I don't think he would be a great fit from a culture standpoint. And that is as much as this... this is as much an issue and a prominent issue, re-establishing a culture of winning, setting standards, getting training back to a sufficient quality, all of these things that we're hearing emerging about what has dipped at the club in recent years. That cultural reset is as much a reason that Lukaku shouldn't come back as just generally the fact that he's just not been great in a Chelsea shirt. So I don't particularly want him here, but it wouldn't surprise me if he is here for pre-season.
I mean, that's the situation, right? Like, do you keep one? Do you keep the other? We got gaps, which is where we go. I would say 82% said sell, 15 said keep, 2.5 with the loan, right? So I'll go on record after trying to poke a discussion, say I'd sell. I want a loan, but I want a sell clause with him, right? Like, Joe, I don't want to repeat last summer where we spent however many weeks trying to get the loan deal set up. We ended up heavily subsidizing it with no kind of end in sight. If you're going to spend that much time working on him, it needs to come with a finality to it, so we don't have to continue to do this for the rest of his remaining contract. It is too much of a time suck and an energy suck for someone who isn't at the club. That's what I would say. So, gentlemen, we got to the end. We've got a squad, kind of, maybe. Do we? So I think we should review them here real quick. See where we're at, and see essentially what holes in the squad we have. I would say there are a lot of departures from our list. A lot of players have to go. Good thing we've got a lot of sporting directors and technical directors that can help negotiate them out. We even have 2 co-controlling directors with Bully and Bedad, so they will be busy. But I've got Kepa, Bettinelli, and then a transfer in for goalkeeper. I've got Reece and Malo Gusto on the right side of defense. I've got Badiashile, Koulibaly, and Levi Colwill on the left side of my center backs. And I'm split. I got Silva or Trevo. If Silva wants to go to Fluminense, adios. Trevo stays. If Silva stays, I think Trevo's going to go. And then West Fofana. At the left side, I've got Chilwell and Matson. I really want to push for Matson. I want to see him. I want that progression to be there. Joe said he's done everything right. We need to reward him. In the midfield, I've got Enzo, Gallagher, Conte, and Mason. Fingers crossed. If he goes, obviously you're going to have to replace him. And then Andre Santos, while Carnes goes on loan. And then I've got a transfer in. Sounds like Ugarte, it looks like he'll be there. Either way, Caicedo, they're going to have to bring someone into that midfield. If Mason goes, you're going to have to bring in 2. Attackers, I've got Mudryk, Madueke, Sterling, and Kunku. I know he can flex. As my wingers, you're going to have to bring someone in, or you stick with Pulisic. Maybe it's just one too many transfers, but that's where I'm at. And then forwards, you've got Broja, Kai, and then a transfer in as well for that forward role. Again, you tell me. Nkunku wants to play number 9, then you've got two winger transfers. If he is more of an attacker like a number 10, then you need another striker to come into play. That's what I've got. We'll put it out at social as its own little box and see. But Dan, how does your team shake out?
Look, I think there's a lot of similarities amongst our squads, which is not, I hope, not necessarily a group think, but more us being really, really good at evaluating talent and trying to do our best job as interim sporting director and coming up with a solution for Chelsea. So we'll be sure to fax these across, send them over the necessary channels to the team. I think you have 24 players in this squad in total. I think 5 of the total signings this summer, including Nkunku and Ugarte. I'm just penciling them in at the moment, but if you don't sign them, you'll need a replacement. So 3 goalkeepers, 2 currently signed with Slonina and Bettinelli. So there's a +1 in that situation. 9 players on defense. I don't think you need to touch defense at the moment. It's including Reece James, Malo Gusto, Benoit Badiashile, Trev Chalobah, Wes Fofana, Levi Colwell, and then Kalidou Koulibaly. In this scenario, I don't think Kalidou can move. I think you want to keep Levi, and so maybe Silva is the one who makes way. Again, if you keep him, then my hope would be that you try to move on Koulibaly as much as possible, and then you round it out with Ben Chilwell and Ian Maatsen, with Cucurella finding somewhere else to play, please. You have 6 individuals in midfield with 4 currently signed. Enzo Fernandez, you bring back in Santos, Ugarte, and Lewis Hall, and then Conor Gallagher with a +1 in that position with one of the names that we've been linked to as a top-tier individual. My assumption would be that N'Golo Kante just isn't part of the plans for next season. And then from an attacking standpoint, I think you have 6 in total with 5 currently signed. That includes Nkunku and Armando Broja, Raheem Sterling, Mikhailo Mudryk, None Madueke, and then a +1 in that scenario. So maybe 1 to 2 players short. I think you probably need to get up to about 26. So there might be some academy promotes that we could talk about as well. Or you retain someone else from the list that I have said is a departure. But that is my squad.
All right, Tweeds, what about you? What did you settle with?
I think I'll caveat this with I have very clearly gone for the burn it down, let him cook / sort of FPL wildcard strategy here in terms of the complete reset. So I will make a nod that this is incredibly unrealistic, and certainly the aforementioned squads are probably more akin to actually what's going to happen there. However, we have Bettinelli in goal, plus 2 new goalkeepers, of course, because why not? One of them probably was actually going to be Jamie Cummings, but that's probably a question for Phil, whether that's a sensible idea or not. Badiashile, Trev, Levi, and Fofana as my 4 centre-backs. Then Reece and Gusto at the right back / right wing back spot. Chile and Maatsen as left back / left wing back. Cucurella is in a bin somewhere in Cobham in this scenario somewhere. Midfield is looking very, very thin, I would say, given my mass culling of pretty much everybody. But Enzo, Lewis Hall, Conor Gallagher, Mason and Ruben. And if they leave, then it's going to have to be Santos and Carney, plus 2 new players. So if that is Ugarte plus another player coming in of starting caliber, essentially. So whether that's a Caicedo or somebody similar. Forwards, Madueke, Mudryk, Broja are the 3 that I've kept. Assuming Nkunku is going to come in there as well. So that's 4. And then possibly 2 new players in there as well. So I have gone for the burn it down, start from scratch. Let's just make this season an FPL wildcard strategy.
I like it. There's a lot of movement on Joe's side. So anyways, Nick, last but certainly not least, you're up.
Yeah, I think I kind of went with a 24-25 man squad, which is a significant cut down based on what Dan was saying. Like, there's a lot of departures there, so lots to do. But goalkeepers, we need a new number 1. I have either Kepa or Gaga as the number 2, and then Bettinelli as the number 3. So those are the 3 goalkeepers. And defense, right back, Reece and Malo Gusto. Center backs, Trev, Thiago, Benoit, Levi, and Wes on a first-name basis with all of them. Left back, we have Chile, Maatsen, and Hall as a backup for those 2, although I think our points about Maatsen may be that he leaves. We don't really know. In the midfield, new DM or DMs, depending on the sales that happen, per Brandon's comment. So that could be Ugarte and maybe someone else. with N'Golo Kante sticking around. I think I'm one of the few that has him here. Number 8s include Enzo Fernandez, Mason, Connor, Andre, or Nkunku, depending on how you see him fitting. But I think those will be the 8s. And then striker, we need a new striker. We have Armando. We're going to keep him as the number 2. We have wingers / 10s of Nkunku, Raheem Sterling, Madueke, and Mudryk. I kind of formatted these into a starting lineup, so I think you're going to get a new number 1 in to play goalkeeper. I think you'll have Reece, Thiago, Badiashile, and Chile starting in a back 4. I think you're going to have the new DM, Enzo, and however you fit Nkunku, Mason, Connor together as the other number 8. And then Raheem Sterling, a new number 9, and Madueke, first game of the season. So a very different looking team than what we've seen recently, but I think that was kind of how I went with it.
Well, there's a lot there, gentlemen. There is a lot of twists and turns because even the squad we want, I think all of us know that it's not the squad we're going to get. A couple of massive things that could change the trajectory of this squad. But we did it. I think we did a really good job. I love this. We'll get graphics out of each of our 4 lineups, let you react to it, submit yours as well. Huge summer for the ownership group. I think if we just have to be honest, Dan, there's a lot of things they got to fix based on what has happened from a disastrous season. Let's hope that the team that they spent all season putting in place is aligned and ready to go, because even June 4th, time's a ticking.
Yeah, that's the challenge, is there's a lot that we're going to have to go through to get this done. I actually think looking back at it, I'm the only person who just assumed that the worst, that Mason will end up leaving. I would absolutely have him in my squad if I thought he was going to be here. But again, set yourself up for the worst, and if something good happens, you're pleasantly surprised. And that way you're already prepared for calamity, which hopefully we have less of thanks to that structure.
Yeah, well, that'll see. Nick, a couple of crucial pieces. Mason is hard to ignore in all of our teams. We all want him, but we don't know if we're going to have him. And as you were even talking about, can you really lose Mason and Kai? What about this and that? He's integral to so many different pieces. It'd be tough.
This is where you start to, even though I think there have been some mistakes, and there could be some massive mistakes depending on what the sporting directors decide to do on the Mason front, you start to get a little bit of empathy for how they have to build a squad, right? Because one move for Kai could change the trajectory of what you thought about that number 10, number 9 position. One move for Mason could similarly do the same thing. These are not just independent moves that happen. They all happen connected to each other. And, while it is fun to play fantasy football and do our keep sell loan at the end of the season and have some fun with it, and I do hope this was fun. I hope this wasn't like us dragging a bunch of players. I think it's just, the realities of the situation that we face, that they're going to have to make those real life calls. And so, we hope that they do the absolute best that they can. We have plenty of advice to give them based on these series of podcasts, but it's a big summer coming up.
Yeah, for sure. And to that point, right, you also need to get realistic valuations in return. You can't just let certain players go for nothing in insulting bids. So anyways, there's a way that we can help bring you all of the coverage, and that's preseason, right? We are going to be heading around on the preseason tour with Chelsea. So tons of content coming out of that, tons of podcasts, tons of interviews, things of that nature. We'll keep you plugged into everything that's going on as Chelsea do their preseason tour stateside, getting ready for a comeback season, I think is what we're going to officially call it. So much more content as always. Super excited to have tweets on for this one. Nick and Dan, as always, KSL is a big hit. All right. So enjoy our KSL week. We got a ton of content coming at you all week as well, and prepping for future weeks and things like that. So get excited. If you have ideas, send it our way. But that's going to do it. So until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.